Carolyn. It's so nice to spend the morning with you.
Hi.
I'm so excited to get a chance to talk with you about your book, Reading Shakespeare in Jewish Theological Frameworks, Shylock Beyond the Holocaust. It's really an important new reading of one of Shakespeare's most controversial plays. Can you tell me what prompted you to write this book?
I've always been fascinated by the play, and I felt after I looked at what had been written about the play that there was a space and that what I had to say from my experience could very much contribute to the present understanding of the Merchant of Venice and certainly of Shylock. I'm rabbinically trained, so I'm somewhat trained in Jewish theology, and I could contribute some very interesting teachings to the brilliant criticism that's already there.
Great. Well, that's certainly what attracted me to the book. So I'm glad that's what's motivating you. So the subtitle of the book is Shylock Beyond the Holocaust. What is your reading of Shylock, and how is it different from most of what we see in Shakespeare criticism today?
When I imagine Shylock in everyday life, like let's say we take Shylock even beyond the play, I see Shylock as the guy in Temple who will not stop with his teachings, and everybody's saying Kaddish, Kaddish, and they want the service to be over. But Shylock is there and saying things that might be pertinent or might not be pertinent, but he's sort of holding off the wine and the bread. And that was my first impression of Shylock. He really tries, and I feel very sorry for him. And he's very focused on the pain of his people, which is completely understandable, and it's why we so relate to the play today. However, Jewish theology is really the process of revelation towards redemption, as says Franz Rosenzweig. And what that means is that we're always looking for light, we're always looking for epiphanies, we're always facing the future and looking for a way to move into a new paradigm of care, human flourishing, and maybe even more intimacy with an otherworldly force. So that is really the way I see Shylock as a perfect example of how we all as a community in the past, present, future can move towards something that is far more productive today.
Do you see Shylock as primarily a victim or something else?
Well, I understand that the critical history of Shylock really keeps him in the story of either being a victim or the villain of the play, but I think that the play is inhabited by this move towards transcendence that Shakespeare manages to put into the text.
That's beautiful. So I really am fascinated by your account of Jessica, the daughter of Shylock, who is often kind of denigrated in contemporary criticism as, abandoning her father, abandoning her religion, and running off with a guy we don't really know much about in the play. And you have a really different take on Jessica. So tell us about Jessica.
Jessica is the daughter of a man who defines himself by his victimization, not by his light, not by his beauty. I can imagine that that would be really repressive, and that she may want to get out of that. And what Jessica has that some Jewish women today and in the past might not have within her spirit and her being is the courage to move on and get out. Of course, she's highly mistaken that if she leaves Shylock, she'll have a much better life with Lorenzo. But I mean, at least she has the courage to get out of the situation that she's in. She is highly marginalized. In the Jew of Malta, Abigail, named for a biblical character, is, my fortune, my felicity. That's what her father calls her. What does Shylock do to Jessica? She's a servant, basically. And he also loads all of his problems on her. He comes home, I don't want to go to dinner with the Christians, look what I have to do. And Jessica takes it all in, but you can tell that this is not the life that she wants. And she has the courage to move on. Does she steal from her father? I think she takes what she needs in order to get out of this highly repressive world.
In a sense, she's taking her dowry, right? I mean,
exactly. She's taking her dowry. She's taking what she needs. But then Lorenzo marginalizes her as well, and she's sort of thrown into this world of consideration, self-thought, trying to move towards that which she knows is important to her. If you even look at, Act 5, Scene 1, where Lorenzo is now talking to her about the orbs and the beauty and everything else. And then he has the audacity to say, but we can't hear the heavenly music, as if anything he can hear, she can hear too. And if he can't hear it, she can't hear it. And then he throws her into the quote, quote, muddy vesture of decay, because he's saying that nobody can hear it because of all of the corruption and his corruption. And then she comes out with this really strange comment, I'm never merry when I hear sweet music. And I think what she's saying is that I'm not merry when I hear the music that you're now going to point me towards, which is the popular music and not the music of the orbs that you've just been describing. And she's thrown into this silent consideration because she's like a pharmacon. She's now in between the world, the otherworldly that she wants to get to, that Lorenzo's leaded her to, but not actually left her. He hasn't left her there. He's left her, in this muddy vesture of decay. So she's torn between that world where she wants to go and the temporal, and she needs to consider that. And she brings light from one place to another. She also is the torchbearer. So she's in front holding the light for the masquerade.
I love that image so much. That is so beautiful. Thank you. And so what about Antonio? You have a lot to say about him, including looking afresh at his homoerotic tendencies from within Jewish theological frameworks. What's your intention there?
I think that Shakespeare in The Merchant of Venice is attempting to show an equal corruption with the Jew and with the Christian. And in terms of the homoerotic piece of it, I think that Shakespeare is trying to show the repression. And he's trying to show that Antonio has to move through his repression, and part of that move is his horrible and vile anti-Semitism that comes out. In order for me to show this, it was really important to show that in Jewish theology, we can actually see that the homoerotic is not as sinful as many people might believe. The Torah certainly condemns it. However, if we look at the history of writings going way back, even to the early modern era, there are stories that support the homoerotic, and they are Jewish stories. So it's a conversation that is ongoing. However, I personally think that Shakespeare supports the homoerotic in the play and sort of uses it as a balance with Shylock, because Shylock is definitely, he's treated horribly, and so is Antonio. And Antonio is treated horribly for one reason, and Shylock is treated horribly for another reason.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful. So in a world, our current world, as well as what we see in Shakespeare's Venice, could be defined as violent and corrupt. Those are your words. How does a focus on the epiphanies of these different characters? Your book moves through each character and talks about each one's search for light, each one's desire for epiphany. How does that focus on epiphany contribute to the significance of Shakespeare today?
I believe that both Shakespeare and the rabbis are similar in that they all bring in the Hebrew Bible, okay? And the rabbis would try to introduce the Jewish teachings of the Torah during a time of violence in Rome. Shakespeare, I don't believe, is trying to say the world is horrible, the world is violent, and let's leave it at that. I think he's trying as well to show how we can move through the violence and corruption. And I think that one way, and it's a very Jewish way, but I think it's also universal, is to show the light and sparks in each character on the stage and in each human being. So I think that that is a really productive way of seeing Shakespeare.
That is really, really beautiful and speaks so much to my own approach to these plays as wisdom texts, in which each character is, sort of offered for evaluation, and we can be critical of the characters, but there's always something in those characters that makes them compelling and inspiring in some way if we're open to what it is that drew Shakespeare to give birth to them. I mean, even his villains, he's giving birth to these vibrant, energetic, original creations, and each one does have a spark, even if they might be oblivious to that spark or abusing that spark, or that spark might have been considerably dampened by their social circumstances and their opportunities for moral growth. So your vision definitely speaks to my vision. So here's one final question for you, Carolyn. What is your overall message in this book? And could you maybe focus that message in terms of a line from the play that resonates for you anew after this journey that you've taken through your dissertation research and the writing of your first scholarly book?
Okay. Well, thanks. Well, there's much in the play that certainly points to the theme that I believe Shakespeare is trying to transmit, and the one that I'm trying to show. I'm trying to illuminate this theme of Shakespeare. And that theme would basically be that, yes, we have a lot of violence and corruption in this world. And look at these people who are so confused, who are thrown into absolute capitalism or mercantilism. Yet we can move through. For example, and I've been thinking a lot about this recently, Benjamin speaks of the angel of history, where this wind blows the angel away from history, but it almost blows it in the gut because the angel's looking back at all the horrors. On the contrary, Derrida speaks of moving towards the almost beauty of this world. And I think that Shakespeare's book and play is the perfect forum in which we can create a turn from within the angel of history towards a beautiful future. And the one line that I have not even mentioned in my book, which I've been thinking a lot about recently, is Antonio's line after Gratiano. He's speaking on, and his words have been analyzed a lot, and they've been analyzed beautifully. But at the end of it all, Antonio says, this is Act 1, Scene 1, line 113. Is that anything now? What's really interesting is that if you look at an endnote in the Art and Edition, there's this really long endnote, and some scholars are saying, "Oh no, it was a typo." We can't understand this in modern vernacular, but we can, because Antonio's problem is his melancholy to sadness, and his sadness is very much probably revolves around his homoerotic needs in a corrupt and nasty community. And after Gratiano speaks, how does that serve to bring Antonio into a place of caring, into a place of satisfaction, into a place where he can be part of the community? So is that anything now? What can we do now? And in order to contribute to a world where epiphanies or where realizations and light can make a kinder paradigm. And if we all walked around looking at things, saying is that anything now? And not being judgmental, but knowing that maybe one thing might not be anything now, but something else might be. Then maybe we could all, sculpt our own lives in our own communities and the greater world.
What a gift, Carolyn. The play has given you a gift in this line, and you've received the gift and then given it to us. So that is really a beautiful way to end our conversation together. Thank you so much.
Thank you.